Jason knows it's no coincidence that Sidwell arrived in town, only for Sonny Corinthos's Morris Bernard penthouse to explode. Jason watched Michael Corinthos, Chad Duell, get caught in the crossfire and almost lose his life, and he's not willing to just let it go. General Hospital spoilers. Anna Devane's warning to Jason Morgan. GA spoilers remind fans that Anna warned Jason against taking justice into his own hands. However, Jason is far too outraged to let this all slide. After all, watching his nephew, who has been more like a son to him over the years, go through all the pain he's gone through has been traumatizing for Jason. And there's nothing more cathartic for the hitman than to strike back. But if he does go rogue and attack Sidwell, could he suffer any repercussions? GH spoilers. Anna Devane would be forced to go by the book. Depending on what Jason does to Sidwell, his plan could hit a snag. Will someone see the course of action Stone Cold takes on Jens? Could Jason get caught in the middle of a criminal activity by a cop or Anna herself? Of course, Devane would have no choice but to go by the book and arrest her friend. If this happens, Jason's worst nightmare of not being there for Danny Morgan, Asher Antonsen, would come true. Going to jail would leave Danny without a mother and father. Plus, as Jason and Sasha Corbin, Sophia Matson, are also dabbling in a romance, this could scare her straight into staying far away from Stone Cold for her own safety, and the safety of her unborn child. The only silver lining in a circumstance like this one is that Jason has Diane Miller, Carolyn Hennessy, as an attorney who would likely figure out a way to get him off the hook, but that doesn't mean he won't suffer with some chaos and drama along the way. Could Jason land in jail for striking back at Sidwell? Share your thoughts below. Jason Morgan had always known that life in Port Charles wasn't a peaceful one, but he had never been prepared for the brutality of seeing his nephew, Michael Corinthos, caught in the crossfire of a bomb meant for someone else. The explosion that leveled Sonny Corinthos' penthouse was no mere accident. It was a message, but to whom and why? Jason didn't believe in coincidences, and everything about this situation felt like it was meant to pull him back into the chaos he had tried so hard to escape. Standing in the smoldering ruins of the building, Jason's blood ran cold. The destruction wasn't just physical. Michael's life had been hanging in the balance, and for a moment, it seemed like the life of the boy he'd watched grow up would be snuffed out by someone's vengeful act. Jason's protective instincts kicked in, and in that moment, nothing else mattered except making sure the person responsible would pay. "I'm going to find them," Jason muttered to himself. His voice was low, barely a whisper against the sirens wailing in the background. Michael had been fortunate. He'd walked away with injuries, but nothing permanent. The same couldn't be said for the penthouse, or for the people involved. Sidwell. The name had been floating around in the criminal underworld for months now, but until now, Jason hadn't seen a clear reason for why Sidwell would come to Port Charles. He was a shadow, a mercenary with a reputation for doing dirty work for anyone who could pay him. But this wasn't about money. This was about something personal, and it had to do with Sonny. "Do you have any idea who did this?" Jason had asked, his voice calm yet dripping with an edge as he looked over at Michael, whose face was pale but determined. Michael had been through hell, but his resolve was stronger than ever. "I don't know who planted the bomb, Jason, but I know who's behind it," Michael had said, his words cutting through the smoke-filled air. "Sidwell, he's the one we need to go after." Jason had no doubts. Sidwell was behind the explosion. The fact that Michael had survived, it wasn't coincidence. But why? What had they done to earn the wrath of a man like Sidwell? That was something Jason intended to find out. Chapter 2. The Warning. Anna Devane had been watching Jason for a long time. She knew the depths of his loyalty to his family, but she also knew the destructive path his thirst for revenge could lead him down. It wasn't the first time she'd had to warn him, and it certainly wouldn't be the last. But this time felt different. This time, Jason wasn't just angry, he was shaken. He had almost lost Michael. He had almost lost his nephew, who had become more like a son to him than anything else. The two of them had been through too much together for Jason to simply walk away from this. He couldn't stand by and let Sidwell continue to terrorize their lives. There would be no more waiting, no more watching from the sidelines. The anger in Jason's chest burned like a fire, and he knew there was only one way to extinguish it. "You need to let it go, Jason," Anna had said, her voice laced with the authority of someone who had seen too much of the darkness in the world. "I understand your anger. I do. But if you go after Sidwell, you're going to make a target out of yourself and your family. Is that really what you want?" Jason had stood there silent. He had always trusted Anna. She was his friend, his ally in a world where trust was rare. But he wasn't in the mood for her warnings. Not now. "You don't understand, Anna," he had replied, his jaw clenched tight. "I'm not just going to sit by and let this go. Michael almost died. I'm not going to let Sidwell walk free." Anna had studied him for a long moment. "You're not thinking clearly. Revenge isn't going to bring back what you've lost. It'll only destroy you and the people you care about." But Jason had already made up his mind. He wasn't going to let Sidwell get away with it. He didn't care about the consequences. All he cared about was getting justice for Michael and for the family he had sworn to protect. "I'm not going to let him hurt anyone else," Jason had said, his voice a quiet promise. Anna had sighed. She knew she couldn't stop him, not if he was determined. But there was something else she couldn't shake. She couldn't help but wonder if Jason was walking straight into a trap. She had seen the signs before, the way vengeance clouded judgment, the way it made even the most rational men do things they would later regret. Chapter 3. Crossfire. As Jason began to investigate Sidwell, the puzzle pieces started to fall into place. Sidwell wasn't just some mercenary for hire. He was a player in a much larger game. He had ties to some of the most dangerous people in the world, people who didn't care about anyone except themselves. And that made Sidwell dangerous. More dangerous than anyone realized. Jason's plan was simple. Find Sidwell, make him pay, and make sure no one ever heard from him again. But there was a problem. Jason wasn't the only one with a plan. Sidwell had been one step ahead, and his actions were calculated. Jason had walked into a world of danger that even he hadn't expected. One evening, as Jason tracked Sidwell's movements, he received a call from an unlikely source, Sasha Corbin. They had grown close recently, their connection undeniable, and even though the dangers of their world loomed over them, they couldn't help but be drawn to each other. Sasha's voice was shaky, but she managed to get the words out. "Jason, I don't know how to say this, but I'm scared. I think Sidwell's after me too." Jason's heart stopped. "What do you mean?" "I think he knows about me and you. He's dangerous, Jason." "Please, be careful," Sasha pleaded, her words filled with urgency. "And Jason, I'm pregnant." The news hit Jason like a punch to the gut. He had known about Sasha's pregnancy, but hearing it out loud, hearing the fear in her voice, made everything real. He couldn't afford to lose her or the baby. Not like this. "Stay where you are," Jason had ordered, his mind racing. "I'll get to you, I promise." But even as he said the words, he knew it might already be too late. Sidwell wasn't just after revenge. He was trying to break Jason's world apart, piece by piece. And now, with Sasha in danger, Jason had to make a choice. Continue hunting down Sidwell, or protect the woman he loved and the child she carried. Chapter 4. The Brink of Chaos. Jason's investigation into Sidwell's activities grew more intense as he followed every lead, determined to bring the man down before he could do any more damage. But as he moved deeper into the criminal web, the stakes only grew higher. He was no longer just fighting for revenge. He was fighting to protect his family, his future. And the closer he got to Sidwell, the more dangerous it became. Anna Devane was right. Jason was walking a fine line, and with every step he took, it seemed as if his world was on the brink of collapse. The fear of losing everything, his freedom, his family, and even his own life, was becoming a constant weight on his shoulders. The risk of getting caught in the crossfire was too great, and Jason knew that if things went south, there might be no way out. He had one chance to stop Sidwell, and he wasn't about to waste it. Chapter 5: The Final Showdown. The night Jason finally confronted Sidwell was as brutal as he had imagined. He found him in a rundown warehouse on the outskirts of Port Charles, surrounded by his men. Jason didn't hesitate. He had come too far to turn back now. But just as he was about to make his move, Anna Devane appeared, her gun aimed squarely at Sidwell's head. "You're not doing this alone, Jason," she said, her voice steely. "We're in this together." And for the first time in a long time, Jason allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to carry the weight of the world on his own.